Hey, welcome back to another episode of Georgie's Dripping the Dipping, the F1 series, of course. I am your host today. It's not MG Denzel, unfortunately. Kind of. The thing is, I'm having small issues with my voice and my mouth, actually, to be honest, because I had some sutures due to a small accident that I had, so it's a bit swollen, so there might be voice distortions, if I may say. Yeah, so please bear with me because today's episode is very important because we are going to touch an area of F1 which is not spoken every day but very, very important. So stay tuned. All right. So, as I informed you guys earlier, today we have a very, very special episode. Today we have the slow pit stop guys with the episode. Please, drum rolls.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I'm playing drum roll. So, guys, please give us an introduction about your podcast and what you guys doing so we can start the show.
You want to do that, Arfa? You can talk a little bit about who we
So,
are.
Mohammed and I are cousins. I live in the UK, Mohammed lives in the US, and we've been Formula One fans for some time now. And we've started a podcast and a YouTube channel. You can find us at Slow Pit Stop on Twitter, Instagram, and Not That Good Media on YouTube. And basically, we just have fun. We have no idea what we're talking about. We're not very clever at all, but we just like to share our thoughts with anyone that will listen. To two crazy people shouting into the void. So thank you, anyone that is listening to us, and we are delighted to be joining you today.
Yeah, I call it our group therapy sessions because whenever we have a bad race, we get together and we get a little bit of therapy going by the two of us talking to each other and doing a podcast.
There you have it. That's a slow pit stop for you.
Yep.
So as I heard from you itself, you used to work as an intern for the McLaren's medics team.
Yeah, so when I was a student, I'm a doctor. Mohammed's a final year medical student. He's soon to be a doctor as well. So when I was a student, we had a project that we had to do, and it could be on anything you wanted. So I decided to do dehydration in Formula One drivers, and I emailed every team in the world, Ferrari, Red Bull, everyone. So Red Bull emailed back and said, no, we can't get involved in this, but thank you for contacting us. And then McLaren emailed back, and the doctor said, okay, come down, meet me. Let's talk about this. So we talked about the theory of dehydration, blah, blah, blah. And he said, look, I've been collecting this data for years and years. Why don't you shadow me around, see what you can learn? So for a few years, I got to visit every now and again, see the factory, work on some sports medicine stuff. And it was just completely different to the rest of my studies.
How was the experience in McLaren team?
Yeah, it was wild. I got to meet Ron Dennis. I got to meet Martin Whitmarsh, Jonathan Neal. So, when you think of McLaren and you think of that silver car with the Vodafone, it was that era. So it was 2008, 2009 until sort of 2013. That's when I was there.
Okay, so this question goes for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, recently, we had this jewelry issue. It's actually, in my opinion, that's a universal rule for any sports. Even at school, we are supposed to remove jewelry. But from the fan side and for Louis, it's fair enough to question the intention behind the sudden emphasis on the rule when it comes to F1. So, what are your thoughts?
I don't know why, like, in general, I don't know what the new race directors are doing. I'll put it that way, because for the last couple races, they've been like, oh yeah, we're going to be all strict. We're going to enforce track limits. We're going to, but then when push comes to shove, they really haven't been doing anything new other than enforcing rules that don't seem to need to be enforced. Like the jewelry was a big one. The underwear is another one that you have to wear, like fireproof underwear. How are they going to enforce that? Is it the teams? They haven't announced that either. But in the race itself, Lance Stroll pushes Valtteri Bottas off track, and it's no penalty, and people go, wide, and they don't get a penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage, or Sergio Perez is speeding under yellow flags, and there's nothing. So I don't know what is happening with the race director and the stewards, and I feel like they're trying to figure out what their like tone is going to be all season, and they want to come off as like strict and no nonsense, but then in reality it's just the same old that we're used to from the stewards and the race director. I feel like this is just something that they're trying to like mark their authority, like, yeah, no jewelry, even though it's always been a rule. So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure why this is where they decided to like draw the line this weekend.
But I think, just to play devil's advocate a little bit, I think they just put it in the director's notes as like a minor thing. And sometimes when because they would have had pages and pages of instructions that they've given the drivers, and for what it has highlighted this one and amplified it. And maybe, from the director's point of view, they were just saying, oh, I just need to remind people about this, but actually what I really care about is track limits and weaving and whatever else, right?
Okay, but then choose to highlight something else in your director's notes. Like, how are you gonna put in like, yeah, we need to change the underwear, specifications, and we need to make sure there's no jewelry, and that's how I care about track limits, because I put the jewelry line
No,
in.
but I mean they would have put everything in, because this is a document with pages and
Okay,
pages, and we picked up on a single line. But
Yeah,
there's different sides of this. So on the one hand, they changed certain rules about fireproof clothing in whatever year Grosjean was there. And so
Bahrain
fireproof
2020.
clothing, it had to protect you for 20 seconds. And for whatever reason, they changed it to 30. And that's how long it took Grosjean to get out. So you can see there's a benefit. But on the other side of it, I don't think they did this to specifically target Lewis Hamilton. But we need to remember that, I don't wear any jewelry, so it's out with my normal life. But for certain people, jewelry and whatever else can be very, very, very important to their own identity. And a lot of people will empathize with your employment telling you that you cannot wear something that for you may be linked to your cultural or religious identity. And they will empathize with the idea of, this is unjust. They're just making a big deal out of nothing. And so I can understand why fans and people are getting upset. And yeah, I think just from the position I'm sat in, maybe I can't fully put myself in their shoes, because I don't wear jewelry or anything like that. But I don't want to dismiss people that are getting upset about it either.
But on the same side, I think there's one point that you mentioned about the media highlighting only that part. Because I saw the tweet that one of the F1 journalists tweeted, highlighting only that part, and I think only after that maybe the whole thing took off. But the thing is, like, the media should be responsible about what they're supposed to say and what they're not supposed to say, and what they're emphasizing and what they're not. So just because they want to get some clickbaits, the engagement growing, I think they just made something out of nothing, sort of a thing, because this is a rule for their own safety.
Yeah, I've not had a look at the full, race director's notes, but I can imagine if a journalist reported, race director says no speeding in the pit lane, nobody's going to report on that, but technically that stuff is in there somewhere probably. But like you said, they highlight things that they know are going to cause anger and get clicks.
So my next question: how prepared should the medical team of an F1 team should be, and what sort of things does a driver go through before a race day, or the tests and checkups that they must go through during off and on season? The procedures that they are doing to get fit during the race.
So I think there's three different sides to this. When you're talking about the medical health of drivers, there's three roles that medics play. So one, it's trackside safety. If there's an accident, the emergency specialist that extract them from cars and get them to the medical center, whatever else, that's one arm of it. Another arm is the driver performance. And this is what I think is very, very different to normal medicine. So, when someone comes to hospital, they're sick, and our job is to try and get them better. Whereas a Formula One driver is not an unwell person that you're trying to get better. You're trying to make that person the best version of them that you can. And actually, what I learned from McLaren, I've tried to carry into my medical work. Because if I have, a 9,000-year-old little old lady who smoked 400 cigarettes a day and has really bad lung disease, I'm not going to get her to run a marathon tomorrow. But my focus should be to try and make her health the best version of her that she can be. So it's a different mindset, and it's very interesting. They look at a whole variety of fields: psychology, biomechanics, muscle strength, cardiovascular fitness, nutrition, hydration. So they look at all these things. And I suppose the third side of it, which we don't really pay much attention to, is the medical staff that are involved in making sure there's no doping or cheating or all these kind of things, blood test, urine test, whatever else that happens as well.
Okay, so you took a question out of my other question.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, are there any substance that's not allowed to use during your time as a driver? And for an example, steroids, of course.
Yeah.
The steroids, how can that increase a person's performance as a driver? I mean, the person is driving
Yeah.
normally. I know the steroids are there to enhance the performance when it comes to the bodybuilding. Of course, we can see that. And for some other athletes who are actually on the sports field and stuff, yes, they can get the strength to run faster or, lift heavy and stuff like that. But how does that play when it comes for a driver?
Yeah. So, Mohammed, do you want to talk? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say that Formula One is such a muscle intensive sport, and I don't think people really realize how much training goes into it. But they're using their entire body, like they're using their upper body strength, lower body strength. When there's no power steering, so when you go through those turns, you're literally wrestling your car through those turns at 200 kilometers an hour or whatever, if it's a high speed turn. So there is a lot of muscle power that goes into Formula One. And anytime you introduce things like steroids into it, anabolic steroids, you're going to enhance the ability of your body to build muscles. Even though you're kind of enhancing like the white fiber or whatever, the short-term muscle fibers. So it might not be the best for a Formula One driver because they need to have this energy over an hour and a half, 2 hours for the entire race. But it would help them build muscle. And especially for a Formula One driver, their most important muscle is their neck. It's not, anything else. Their neck undergoes 6-7 Gs through any given turn.
Yeah.
So if they were using steroids to enhance, the building of their neck, then that's going to give them an advantage for sure.
Oh yeah, sorry. So what I was going to add to that is, you're right. The G force is what multiplies and causes the strain. So, like Mohammed was mentioning, you get all these G forces on your neck. The steering, they do technically have power steering, but with the G forces, it gets so much more difficult. And the next time you're at the gym, anyone that's listening, I would say, grab a weight, any lightweight, 5 kilos, 10 kilos, whatever, hold it out in front of you like a steering wheel, and just turn it all the way left and all the way right, and then just keep doing that and see how quickly your arms get tired. And pushing the brake pedal, it's not like pushing the brake pedal in your car, because when you're doing it against G forces, suddenly it can become like pushing a 50, 80, 100 kilo weight. So doing all of that, there's some studies out there, you can Google them and find them, that looked at, drivers' heart rates through a race. And they can set up at 150, 160 beats per minute. Then the only time it drops down to 100 or so is when they come into the pit lane. So they need to have the cardiovascular fitness of someone that's running for an hour and a half, like a marathon runner or something. So Formula One, they comply to the International Olympic Committee rules, the WADA rules. And so sometimes you look at certain substances that are banned for them, like, I don't know, like Lemsip, cold medicine, flu medicine, that kind of stuff, because some of it can cause vasodilation of blood vessels and in theory give you a performance boost, but they follow the same rules as other athletes.
I was just gonna say, if you've ever been karting, like I've been karting before, and in the moment it's all fun and stuff, and you're having a good time. But the next morning, I was so sore, like unbelievably sore. My arms were sore, my legs were sore. Felt like I had just been in like a 2-hour workout session, because that's what it is. You're working out your entire
Yeah.
body when you're in the cart, or when you're in the car even.
They sweat so much they lose 2-3 kilos per race.
Yeah, that's why the drinks is so important for them.
Yeah. They
So that's why they
pre-hydrate
have to do.
5-6
Yeah.
liters before. That's why they've got all these deals with like different company. When I was at McLaren, they had partnerships with GSK, the drug company, through their brand Lucozade, and they were working on isotonic sports drinks and things. When what's his face? Who's the one that presents on Channel 4 now? He used to be a McLaren driver, then Red Bull. Coulthard.
Jensen? Oh,
No,
Coulthard,
David
yeah.
Coulthard. So David Coulthard was one of the guys that pioneered and helped develop, these slim, fast protein drinks.
Wow.
And because he
Really?
used them as meal replacement, because he found it, driving, because they used to do so much testing then. So driving on a full stomach after lunch, he found it very difficult. So he was like, I need calories, but I don't want solids in me because it affects my performance. So he was using these meal replacement drinks for lunch to not feel too bloated and things when he was driving.
But was there any side effects for the long run?
I don't think so, because he would only use them for like a meal replacement.
Or it just during the races and stuff?
Yeah. So for his lunch that day, he wouldn't eat. So a lot of people, like Nico Rosberg, I think he's talked about how he would get nervous and only be able to have cereal or something, because you don't want too much in their stomach when they're being thrown around with all those G-forces. Imagine eating like loads and loads of food and sugar and things and going on a roller coaster. You'd feel sick, So it's that kind of thing.
Oh, it's like that NASA testing that the astronauts go, the basic one that they keep on spinning and spinning and spinning, something like that.
Yeah. That's what it feels like driving a Formula One car, because you're
Oh.
going left, right, all these G-forces against your body. So that's why it's so physical against their muscles, and it's why they sweat so much, because they're working so hard.
Arfad, I've got a question for you on that note, talking about
Uh-huh.
making you the best version of yourself you can be. You are a respiratorist. I don't know how you say that in the UK. In America, we call it pulmonologist. So you're a pulmonologist, and you've had a lot of experience with COVID patients, and we know a number of drivers. Seb, Lewis, Lance Stroll had it, Kimi had it. Like, so many of them have had COVID.
Yeah.
I'm curious how we know so little about the post-COVID complications, the long COVID they call it. How are these drivers, fighting those effects, the brain fog, the COVID cough, etc.? How are they dealing with that when they get into the car?
So you're right. It's very, very poorly understood, and it's something that affects people so differently. One of my colleagues, he got COVID in the first wave, and then he got it again recently. And the first time he got it, he was unwell for a couple of days, got better, fine, carried on with life. The next time he got it, he was fatigued, he couldn't concentrate. When I got it in November last year, I really, really struggled to concentrate. I was like, oh, I've tested positive, I can't go to work. The rule at that time was 2 weeks. So I downloaded a PlayStation game. I downloaded Assassin's Creed, and I said, okay, I'm just going to chill out at home for 2 weeks. The next day, it was so difficult for me to concentrate on the game. I couldn't understand what I was doing. I couldn't even understand what button am I supposed to press, what's happening. That all I did all day was sleep. And so if you imagine, you're going along at 200 miles an hour, you need to be pressing the right buttons and levers and things. So I don't think any driver would step into a car unless they're 100% ready, but it can massively delay your training and your preparation for races and your understanding of the telemetry and all the other things that you need to do to be a good driver. So it can affect people in different ways. And, I hope none of the drivers get any of those long-term effects, because, we want to see them at their best and happy and healthy.
Do you think that had something to do with Sebastian Vettel's performance and others as well during the races?
So, only Sebastian Vettel can know how he is performing at the minute. I will say at the very least, it has indirectly affected his performance, because these cars are new. The way you drive them is completely different. The way the downforce changes as you suddenly brake and go into a corner, because it's all underneath the car. It's not on top of the car. And you remember, Sebastian was at his most successful when he had that double diffuser at the back. He was getting on the power so much earlier. It was a bit paradoxical how he was driving, because he would get on the power early to create all these exhaust fumes and generate downforce. And, Mark Webber said, he struggled to get his head around that, but Sebastian Vettel wanted all that rear downforce. Everyone has now had a couple of races to adjust to these new cars, where Sebastian has not.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is that Daniel Ricciardo also had COVID before the season started. So he also struggled, I think, a little bit coming in to the races. But I don't know, because everyone gets COVID so differently. Like Kimi had it and he didn't really care. But, Seb is out for 2 weeks, even beyond the quarantine period. So I don't know. It's certainly difficult, I think, for them to prepare for.
Or you can be like me and have a long-term cough that won't go away.
I was gonna ask that.
He's all right, folks at home. He's fine.
This is just my long-term problem now. I was looking for the mute button, but the program you're using doesn't have a mute. So I'm just going to keep coughing. Actually. I'm very sorry.
No, it's okay. It's about anything and everything, so it's okay. So my next question for you is for both of you. Why should you need a personal trainer at the paddock always with the driver? What does a personal trainer have to do during the race times?
I think Lewis's personal trainer, Angela, is a little bit more than just a personal trainer. She's like a manager, like a best friend, like a partner. She does a lot of different things. She's there for him for his emotional support, his psychological support, as well as his physical support. But in general, all of these drivers have one person like that in their lives that maybe their relationship isn't as close, but it's somebody who's constantly working with them, traveling with them. And I think it's important because somebody at home may not know what it's like to get on a plane for 10 hours, and you have to get off, then you have to perform immediately, then you've got press, and then you got this and that and that, then you're traveling again, and so they may not understand that. But if you've got somebody who travels with you, they know what your life is like, they know what facilities you have to train in while you're traveling, they can cater their exercise routine, their workout routine to you, and they know what you're going through. And I think that's what's really important for somebody like Lewis Hamilton in Angela Cullen, who's very much like his best friend on track, because she knows what they're going through. She understands what a loss feels like in his mental psychology. She understands what a win feels like, so there's a lot that goes into it. But I think the personal trainers that they have are very essential to keeping them grounded and being, a emotional partner that's there with them through the whole race.
Yeah, all the drivers have their personal trainer. And I think, you look at Kimi Räikkönen, I think he was with the same guy through his entire career, Mark Arkol or something like that. And yeah, Arnold or something. So he was with him his entire career, from McLaren, Ferrari, Lotus, Alfa Romeo. And I think part of it is that it's someone that helps you push yourself, because they will push you when you want to stop. And it's someone that can take a lot of the mental load off of you, because, they want to focus on just the driving, but all that stuff, the physical training, everything else is really, really important. And it's someone that will take that mental load away from you so that you don't have to think about it. And that allows you to perform at your best.
So we've been talking about the drivers' physical fitness levels and what sort of thing that they have to go through physically and mentally and emotionally and stuff. But how important is it for the team to be physically fit enough to perform their task? For an example, the pit stop crew and all.
So Arfa,
I'm so sorry for the the voicing stuff, because due to my sutures, it's very hard to talk.
No, you talk as make yourself comfortable. That's don't worry, we can hear you perfectly.
We're taking over. Slow pit stop takes over.
Please do.
Arfa, why don't you tell them the nature of the research you were doing for McLaren? Because I think that was really interesting.
So one of the projects I was doing was looking at how jet lag affects people, because obviously they're traveling all around the world, right? So I can't go into specifics, otherwise some McLaren person will get angry at me. But
let's get a call from Zach Brown. I want to hear that.
Basically, in broad terms, jet lag affects people differently, right? So some people, under that stress, it improves their performance. You hear this a lot. Some people are like, "Oh, I don't work well until the deadline for my essay is just about to come up," right? Whereas other people, the stress is detrimental, and it makes them perform slower, or they're more tired and fatigued. Some of us, we've done night shift. The way you work in the daytime is so much different to how well you perform in a night shift. So the teams look at this, and it's tiny, tiny, tiny margins of performance that make a difference in a race. So, if a driver comes out just 1 millisecond ahead of another driver and goes on to win the race, that would have all been down to the pit crew making sure they were fit enough, react quickly, get those tires on and off. I used to think the tires were really heavy until I went and picked one up, and actually you could pick them up with 2 fingers. They're pretty light. But this year the
Oh
tires are a
wow,
bit
I didn't know
heavier.
that.
Yeah. But actually just doing the whole thing quickly, it's almost a bit like I don't know, a gymnastic routine or something, because it's all very set, coordinated movements that everyone is doing together, and you do the movement the same way each time. It's almost like being a perfect gymnast, not making any mistake, because if you make a mistake, you then have to correct it, and then you lose time correcting it. So it's very, very important for people not only to physically be there, but mentally, because yeah, I just anybody that's ever worked a night shift before, how slow your brain is in the middle of the night, and you don't want your pit crew or your strategy team or your team boss, all of those people, you don't want them to be working while their brain is that exhausted.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Formula One is one of the only sports where their auxiliary staff, the pit crew, the mechanics, have to train physically as well. Like they all also work out a little bit. They make sure they stretch so they're flexible, and they make sure they have some good cardiovascular ability, and they make sure they have good reaction times. And that's something that you wouldn't normally think that a pit crew would do, but it's become like that because these pit stops are so important. The margins of error, like Arfat said, are so thin. What we think as a second and a half, oh, that's nothing. But if your pit stop goes from 2.5 seconds to 4 seconds, all of a sudden your undercut attempt is a failure, and you've now lost position on track. So it's so important now for the pit crew as well to be physically fit and have the reaction times in order to really maximize performance out of the weekend. And I just think that's so interesting. And so some of the work Arfat was doing, I think, probably has made its way now into Formula One, where he was just looking into how to maximize Formula One pit crew engineer performance, especially in high stress situations, which I think is really amazing. And Arfat, you need to turn that into guests for our show, Slow Pit Stop. I want to hear from Zach Brown, Daniel Ricciardo. Why haven't you made this happen yet?
Well, when I was there, it was all the old crew: Martin Whitmarsh, Ron Dennis. Everyone's been fired.
It's
Oh,
okay, you can get the fired ones.
Yeah, they're more likely to speak, right? They're not under
doesn't
gag orders.
doesn't Martin Whitmarsh work for like Aston Martin or something now?
Yeah, he's a CEO of Aston Martin.
Perfect. There you go. I'm sure he remembers you
Yeah.
from your time at
Like, hey,
McLaren.
remember that time when you went to the toilet to pee and there was that small little Asian guy that suddenly got really nervous? That was me.
That's the worst photo skip.
Come share
All right.
Formula One secrets with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna take a huge jump from the medical side to the Grand Prix itself. What are your takes on the Australian Grand Prix comparing to the other two races and the new regulations with the cars and the track locations and everything?
So yeah, I think we had a really good race. It was tough because Australia usually is a more difficult race. It's harder to overtake because all street circuits are sort of harder to overtake on. But they made these changes coming in to help with the overtaking. Plus the cars can follow. So I think we had a pretty good race in terms of overtaking and racing ability and drive ability, because we saw battles up and down the field, except for battles for first, not really. But I think overall there it was a good change in terms of making drive in terms of overtaking and driving. What do you think, Arfad, or is the jury still out?
No, I think the new cars are very good for allowing people to follow. What's interesting is because everything is so new, I think people are still struggling to get on top of things. I think we're either going to see something like Ferrari just dominating completely the way Braun did in 2009 for the first half, and then suddenly, when everyone gets their act together in the second half of the season, it'll be a completely different championship. And also, I remember that when that rule change came in 2009, you had Red Bull, Toyota fighting at the front, and McLaren and Ferrari were nowhere. And then by the end of the year, Ferrari and McLaren, they were fighting as well. So I think the order is still a bit up in the air. You can see everyone's struggling with different issues, and we just have to give it time.
Yeah, I think the question is, will Ferrari build so much of a gap that by the time these teams catch up, it'll be too late? Sort of like Braun in 2009 in that year. I mean, they have a huge gap right now. They've got a larger gap in the constructors than Red Bull did at any point last year, and we're only on race 3. So I think looking at the development rate of the other teams is going to be very important moving forward.
It's
I
been
think
3
the
races.
Ferrari cars actually didn't bring any huge upgrades even during Aussie Grand Prix as well, right?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think so. I think because it's so far away, logistically, it's difficult to get things there. So minor updates and things have appeared, but no major ones.
So, what are your takes on the Red Bull issues? I mean, they had DNFs like they're throwing DNF like confetti, to be honest. Okay, and first it was a fuel lock, and now it's a fuel leak. So, what's wrong actually? What is going on with Red Bull?
we had this conversation on our show about what would you rather build, a fast engine that's unreliable or a slow engine that's reliable where you build the speed in later. And Arfat was saying it's always better to build a fast engine that's unreliable because you can build the reliability in later. So I think what they've done is they've focused all their energies in putting together a good car and a good engine. And I mean, this is Red Bull's first year making their own engine. And I know Honda kind of stuck around to help them through it, but really it's Red Bull's first year, calling the shots themselves. So I think it was probably expected for them to have a couple issues, at least in the first part of the season. I think the big question was whether the issue in Bahrain was a one-off or not. And then we saw later in Saudi that the AlphaTauri cars also had issues. And then, of course, now, Verstappen has had another issue. So I don't think it is a one-off. I think Red Bull powertrains have some sort of issue that they need to get to the bottom of. But it's that same conversation about reliability. Is it more important to have speed or reliability? And I think Red Bull is going to choose the speed all day long because at least they're fighting Leclerc at the front. They don't want to be like Mercedes or McLaren back in the further back in the field, not being able to fight for wins. But it is a big question to see how fast does it take them to solve this issue. Will it be like what year did they have their Red Bull 13? I think that was 2013 or maybe 2012, maybe 2013, 15, something like that. Anyway, that year they had 13 DNFs all throughout the season. They couldn't stop
I
getting
think it was
DNFs
2015.
Yeah, that was the unlucky car. I remember they called it the Red Bull 13. So if it's like that and they're having DNFs until the end, they're never going to fight for a championship. So it's really a question of how fast will it take them to get to the bottom of it.
But it's not just Red Bull that are struggling. You look at Fernando Alonso, it's the third race, and he showed up with his third engine. He's used up all the engines he can use for the whole year by race 3. So he's clearly going to be taking multiple engine penalties as the year goes on. So this year, I think, is going to come down to it's a struggle between the different issues people have. Ferrari so far seem to have no issues. Red Bull have these mechanical/engine issues. Mercedes have aerodynamic issues. So who can get on top of their issue and who will struggle with it all year long? And that will make the biggest difference to the championship.
But the thing is, like when it comes for the Red Bull cars, New is very famous for building faster cars. But he had this reliability issue during McLaren days as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, because these cars are all essentially prototypes, right? So you're pushing everything to the absolute limit. So you don't want to carry even 1 kilo extra to try and make something more reliable. You'd rather risk it. They're all gamblers to an extent because they want everything is on the extreme limit. And with that, there's fragility in there.
Yeah, like Arfat said, you can build in reliability later. It's easier to build in reliability than it is to change your concept and make yourself faster. So I don't think really it's a question of can Red Bull get over their issues. I think it's a question of when. I think they have a better chance of fixing their powertrain problems than Mercedes does of their aero stuff, even though I do think Mercedes will fix their
Yeah.
aero problems eventually.
Okay, so let me ask you this question before I end the episode for today. What are your predictions for the next race?
Oh boy. Arfa, you go first. I have thoughts.
So I mean, in my mind, when I predicted Australia, I was going to say Carlos Sainz first because I thought the battle between Charles and Verstappen was going to get spicy and they were going to crash into each other. So I thought they were going to DNF and Carlos Sainz was going to take the win.
Yeah, well, that went well.
Yeah, exactly. My fantasy F1 team is in a mess. But I think on paper, Charles Leclerc is the favorite. I think it will probably go, in the order of Ferrari, then Red Bull, then Mercedes. I think what will make a difference is these reliability issues. Will the Red Bull be okay? All that kind of stuff. So I'm going to predict a crazy race. I'm going to say Carlos Sainz wins, Sergio Perez second, and Lewis Hamilton third.
Nice. So I sort of agree with you. First of all, I think Imola is going to suit Ferrari very well. High speed corners, not as many straights. The straights and it's a little bit of a flip from last year. Last year Mercedes did really well on the straights because they had that straight line speed, but this year Red Bull has it. So Imola is a little bit closer to Albert Park in that sense that it's more of a downforce heavy track, and I think that Ferrari, which they have the high downforce setup, Red Bull has the low downforce, low drag setup. So I think Charles Leclerc is going to perform very well, and I think it's really important to see how Carlos Sainz bounces back from this weekend, which was just a very off weekend for him. I personally think, I also think Mercedes is going to finally bring an upgrade. I'm really hoping that they do that. So I think it's going to go Leclerc, Sainz, Hamilton, and I think Red Bull are going to struggle a little bit more. But I don't think they'll be DNFing. I think whatever short-term issue they figured out, they'll have a solution for it by the time we get to Imola.
Do you want to know my extra prediction about Lewis Hamilton, who we're all a big fan of? So I think
don't make assumptions about who I'm a fan of. But okay, yes.
So I think these upgrades will come, across Italy, across Miami, across Spain, and it'll still be Ferrari versus Red Bull. But we'll get to Monaco, and there's just something in my COVID affected bowels that says Lewis Hamilton will win Monaco this year.
Oh man, let's go.
Amen for that, man. All right. So actually, this is another question. Even though I said this is the last one, when you said about the weight, this time in Aussie, Lewis's car weighed more than it should be. I mean, all the cars are overweighting anyways, but they had an extra 1.5 kilos.
Yeah.
So what's your take? I mean, the guy actually went with that.
I think I'm trying to remember how much lap time 1 kilo adds is.
I think it's a tenth of a second. Is it 10th?
Yeah, something.
I think it's a
can't
tenth of
remember.
a second.
They talk about it in the commentary every now and again. So they're carrying weight deficits, but I think they're taking pain now for the idea of being able to fight properly later. There's no point in, because Mercedes expected this race to finish as the third fastest team. So, fifth and sixth. I think by being a little bit faster, they're not going to suddenly jump into third and fourth, but it's worth taking the extra weight and all of these sort of things. If all these tests and studies can help them resolve their aerodynamic issues and be faster and more competitive for wins.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to Mercedes people talk in interviews. George Russell is so optimistic. He's like, yeah, we know what the problem is. We're trying to get a solution. We think we know what we need to do. And then Toto Wolff this past weekend was so pessimistic. He's like, yeah, I don't see us fighting for championships right now. I don't see us doing this. I think we have to be really realistic about where we are, and it's not very
humble,
good.
Didn't he? He said we have to be humble.
Yeah, and it's just odd because you'd think that the 8-time world champions would come out and be a little bit more optimistic, but I think what they're doing is they're taking every single race weekend as another testing session, and they only tested at Bahrain and Barcelona, so those are two kind of specific areas. Like Bahrain is a little bit more of a higher speed, and Barcelona is they have it's very particular to Barcelona. So I think they're looking at all these different tracks. They're getting as much data as they can, and that's helping them come out. See, I think what Mercedes knows is that if they do come up with an upgrade, they don't want to be where the pack was in Bahrain. They want to be where the pack will be in the European races. So they need to catch up and extra. So I think they're putting in extra work to make sure their upgrade isn't just a one-time upgrade, but that it's good for the entire, maybe like half the season or something like that. And I think that's why they've delayed these updates into Australia, and why they're taking more time to work on their car. But with the setup, they've unlocked something, because this was a really good race for Lewis and George in terms of race pace. Lewis was fighting Sergio Perez on pure pace before the safety car. He was going to overtake him on pure pace. That's a huge deal. And I think like Mercedes is doing a lot better, I think. Maybe I think with their setup than people give them credit for.
But do you think that they can win the championship this year?
Who knows?
I think I'll say the favorite is Charles Leclerc and Ferrari.
Oh yeah,
but
absolutely.
The season now is so much longer than it used to be in the past that actually it's almost like having 2 or 3 seasons in 1 year. So we could find for the first third of the year, it's Ferrari domination. For the middle third of the year, it's Red Bull domination. And then the last third of the year, who knows, maybe it'll be Mercedes domination. And then, we'll just have to see who has the most points by the end of that.
I think in 2000...
And who doesn't have the race director on their pocket?
Yeah.
Sorry?
And the race director on their pocket, who doesn't have that?
Yeah. But there's a what's it called? There's a budget limit now, the new introduction. So there's a budget limit, and instead of just buying one director, you have to buy 2. So it's very difficult for the finances now.
And these directors are only concerned about jewelry and underwear, so it's going to be hard to get them to focus on the important things, like getting Latifi.
Speaking of underwear, back to the medics. And I already said that the last question. Okay, I'm going to rubber. This is like a rubber, the elastic blast questions that I have. The underwear. What's with the underwear?
I don't know. They're supposed to wear Nomex underwear, aren't they?
Are they like fire safety or something?
Fireproof. Fireproof underwear.
Well, it's just like what Arfat said. The qualifications have increased to make it more safety, more fireproof. So it went from 20 seconds to 30 seconds, and I think that the standards of their underwear have increased, and so they've just announced that, oh, by the way, we want you guys to start wearing a newer kind of underwear. I don't think it's as big of a deal as people have made it out to be. I'm pretty sure small things like this come all the time.
Yeah, I genuinely have no idea. I totally did not pay attention to any of this.
I was going to say on the Ferrari Mercedes battle, I think it was either 2017 or 2018, Seb was leading by more than 40 points in the Ferrari going into the summer break. So I definitely think things can change. People on Reddit were saying, is it over for Max Verstappen? Is he never going to recover from this? It's way too early for anyone to be making conclusions about the end of the season. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I am so thankful that you guys actually came in for an episode and recorded with me, even though I'm giving you like super low confidence with my voice. I'm so sorry for that.
No. Thank you so much for having us. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's my honor to have you guys here, and I hope on a proper day again that you guys will join back and have a discussion when is also here, hopefully. I think Denzel is stuck at work, so he couldn't come and host the program today. So I'm taking over, even though I have a few issues with my voice.
100% we will come back, but only if Denzel wears fireproof underwear.
Yes.
I will let him know.
And no jewelry.
No jewelry. Fireproof underwear and nothing else.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he can sing that song. You know the song he put on Twitter?
Race, I think.
That he sang that amazing song on Twitter. That's what we want him to do. Fireproof underwear, no jewelry, and sing that song to us. Then we'll be back.
I will send this message to him. I hope that he won't be shooting the messenger.
Yeah.
So guys, please do tell us where to find you on YouTube, on Twitter, how to reach you, what sort of things that the listeners can expect, and you know the drill.
Yeah, so you can follow us at Slow Pit Stop on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. if you type into YouTube slow pit stop, you'll just get a lot of generic people having bad pit stops. So type slow pit stop and not that good media. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube page so that we come up easier to search for people. We've got some fun content on there. Mohammed and I had a race, the first ever race that was ever done. We followed that route. So check that video out and let us know what you think. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you so much for joining. So this is actually a special episode because we have one from UK and one from US, and I am hosting the program from Sri Lanka. So three
nice.
regions.
Amazing.
So thank you so much again, guys, and I hope to see you
for
guys
having us.
again.
Thank you.
And this is it for the episode today. It was a wonderful episode, and we touched many areas regarding the medical side of the F1, especially where some areas that we normally don't talk a lot. But in the future, also, we will be having more episodes, and we will be asking a lot of questions from these guys, the doctors, and hope to see you again with Georgie's Stripping the Dip In from F1 series. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.